Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. In this one, I'm taking a look at Quasar and Ikon. I would have reviewed Gladiator by now, but I'm kind of low on tier 4 materials to upgrade him and Silver Surfer, and it's very likely that the next sneak peek will be to announce that Silver Surfer will be tier 4. And it's also very likely that he will be a meta character for PvP, considering he is already pretty good just with his Reflect and iframe ignore at tier 3. So if his announcement is coming up tonight, then I will likely rush to tier 4 him first, and then kind of gather up the rest of the materials that I have to tier 4 Gladiator and review him. In the meantime, I'm taking a look at the other two characters that came with this update, Quasar and Ikon, and these characters are primarily going to be useful for content like Alliance Conquest. They are mostly situated for PvP given their support, passives, leaderships, and abilities, and won't really have too much value in PvE unless you're a newer account and don't have really that many characters, but even then there are better options for PvE specifically. To make the video a little bit more interesting to those who aren't into Alliance Conquest and to everyone else, I'm going to be doing a massive crystal coupon giveaway, which is going to include up to 900 crystals to 10 people, 600 to another 10, and then 300 to another 10 after that. I've been saving up the coupons for a couple months now to do something special, I guess for reaching 7,000 subscribers, which I'm right at the cusp of, so if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to do that. And also because my birthday is coming up on March 7th, so I just wanted to kind of do something special and give back to the people that have supported my channel. If you want to participate in the giveaway, make sure to go to my Discord channel, the link is in the description below. Join that channel, and then on this YouTube video, make sure to leave a comment down below, which can say pretty much whatever you want, but it has to include your Discord name so that I know who to give the crystal coupons to if you do end up winning. Anyways, the first character that I tested was Quasar on stage 24 of Null. I didn't use a leadership or supports, and I don't have a damage proc. I was able to complete this stage with about 40 seconds left, roughly, just a little bit under that. And I would say that the character is pretty average in PvE, and I wouldn't really recommend building him for this. If you do want to build him with a damage proc, then a CTP of Energy or Destruction are both good options because he is very proc friendly, though you do have to keep in mind that if you do use a CTP of Destruction to try and get some additional value in PvP, you won't really benefit off the penetration because he already has that in his kit and uses it frequently. A CTP of Rage is kind of wasted on him, but regardless of the build that you go with, the rotation for him is 3, cancel 5, cancel 4. Pretty easy, and then once you get the Awakening skill, it's the same thing, you just cancel the Awakening skill first, and then go back into the same rotation, 3 cancel, 5 cancel, 4. Compared to Quasar, Ikon is a good bit better than him in PvE. With her, I went to stage 29 of Null without a leadership, support, or damage proc, and I was able to complete the stage with a little bit over 50 seconds left, or about 10 seconds faster than him, even though it was about 5 stages higher. I would say that this character is a little bit above the average in PvE, but I would still not recommend building her for that because she has so much more value in PvP and because there are far better characters for PvE. However, if you do want to build her with a damage proc, a CTP of Energy or Destruction both work on her because she is very proc friendly, and unlike Quasar, you can actually benefit from the penetration on the Destruction this time around. Again, you can use a Rage if you want to, but it would be kind of wasted, and regardless of the build that you use, the rotation for her would be 3, cancel 4, delay cancel after she goes up in the air and you see the animation of the attack hit the ground, and then you finish off with the 5th skill. Once you have the Awakening skill, it's similar to Quasar, you'd cancel that first and then do the same rotation of 3, cancel 4, delay cancel 5. So you saw that the characters do decently in PvE, but their real value is in PvP, specifically Alliance Conquest, because each of the characters supports leaderships, artifacts, support one another and synergize with one another, and end up forming a pretty good 3-person team. You're not really going to get much value in Timeline specifically because none of them are meta standalone characters. You can see that even though Quasar lacks an iframe ignore, he actually does pretty decent in a 1v1 situation. He's able to take down both lives of Gore and even one life of Adam Warlock a lot of the times. I would say that his survival is actually pretty good. He has 30% damage reduction, 30% guaranteed dodge, which is actually really useful. He has super armor, he has the universal typing, He has healing on 2 skills, the 5th and the 3rd skill, and best of all, he opens with an invincible, which he has on the 4th skill. If you use his leadership, you also gain an additional 40 health to Annihilator tagged characters, including himself, as well as debuff removal. The main issues with his kit are sort of his rotation. He usually uses the 4th skill and the 5th skill and doesn't really touch the 3rd skill, meaning that you don't necessarily get the healing from the 3rd skill, and the worst of all, you don't get the reflect from it, so that makes him kind of struggle versus some of those energy characters because he can't really use the reflect that's in his kit. Although I mentioned that the 4th skill is great because it is an invincible and he opens up with it, the main issue with it is that he doesn't have an iframe on it, so if he's facing any meta character or ones that have penetration, they can simply just go into their own skill and potentially wipe him out before he does the same. Taking these into consideration, the 3 build options that I would recommend for him are a CTP of regen with penetration. The CTP is meant to increase his survival from the healing that he gains from the 5th and sometimes the 3rd skill. He opens with the invincible, so the CTP of authority won't really help him there, whereas the regen would help him with the healing on top of the invincible. And the penetration is there to basically interrupt the opponent since he doesn't have an iframe ignore, so when they get knocked out of their skill, he can basically just attack them then. And it also benefits characters in a 3 vs 3 situation in Alliance Conquest. This option would make the character more of a standalone and support hybrid. If you want him to be more in the standalone side, then a CTP of Conquest would help more with the initial burst that happens in a 3 vs 3 format. And considering that sometimes from my testing he would die with the regen, you might want to potentially consider that if you want him more standalone. But for me, I prefer the support and standalone hybrid option, but it really depends on what other CTPs or builds you use for the other characters on that team. If you want Quasar as a pure support for Ikon and the other character on the team, then you could also consider a CTP of Insight. Although I think Quasar is actually good for a character that doesn't have iframe ignore, and I think would be amazing if they give him iframe ignore on the 3rd skill with that reflect in the future, Ikon is kind of the standout character for PvP specifically in this patch. Similar to Quasar, Ikon isn't a meta character for PvP in Timeline or Alliance Conquest, but she is a very good character when paired up with these other characters to form a solid counter team in Alliance Conquest specifically. With Quasar's leadership, you can give Ikon 40% additional health, you can give her debuff removal, and if you're lucky enough to have Quasar's artifact, you can also give her ignore damage reduction. Although the character is meant to be a hard counter versus energy types, specifically blast energy characters since she has the type advantage as well, she actually does decently versus physical characters too, though she does struggle versus opponents that have invincible in their kit if you don't use something like a CTP of Destruction because she doesn't have penetration natively in her kit. The main benefits in her kit is that she has that iframe ignore counter on the 3rd skill, which she'll open up with and can hit a lot of opponents that just try to hide in iframes, though again she does struggle with ones that also have invincible on them. She has that passive energy reflect in her kit, so she can oftentimes just stand there and the energy opponent will just basically end themselves. And on top of that, if the opponent drops under 40% health, her passive provides her an additional 100% increased damage, which helps both with the reflect and her own attack to be able to finish them off that way too. Ikon also has a really good artifact option that increases her healing and her max HP when she drops under 30% health. I would say that this is probably essential if you're facing off versus meta characters, since they will do a ton of damage to you and you basically need that additional survival to reflect that damage back to them and potentially win the fight. I have that equipped in these current tests so you can see how many times the artifact triggered and ended up helping me in the fights. And in terms of the build options for the character, I would say that a CTP of Authority with the Steel proc is the most ideal option for her. Ikon doesn't have much invincible in her kit, and if she procs the invincible and the opponent doesn't penetrate through it or doesn't have penetration, then they're essentially going to be taking all of the energy damage that they deal back as reflect damage. A CTP of Conquest and a Regen are ones to possibly consider, but I don't think they would be nearly as effective as the CTP of Authority with the Steel proc, because the character has to use the healing skill for the healing portion of those CTPs to be effective. And because she doesn't really have invincible in her kit, she has 3 seconds on the 5th skill, you're not going to get much survival out of just the hit shield alone from the regen or the damage reduction from the conquest, especially because she also only has 25% damage reduction in her kit passively. You might also be wondering about a CTP of destruction because she doesn't have penetration in her kit, but in my opinion, you get more value out of the character having more survival and being able to reflect damage back to energy typed characters specifically. So again, I would advocate a CTP of authority with the steel proc over something like a destruction. You also have to keep in mind that the destruction procs off of the attacks that you do, and oftentimes when you're fighting characters like Jean, for example, you're not really going to be attacking since you want the character to just be a reflect pylon. In order for that to be effective, you need to have more survival. So the obvious go-to team for the Annihilators in Alliance Conquest is to use Quasar's leadership that provides that debuff removal as well as the 40% additional health. And again, if you have his artifact, it also provides the ignore damage reduction on the opponent. This greatly improves Ikon's survivability and makes her a pretty consistent counter versus energy dealing characters. One of the great qualities of Ikon is that she is also an awakened character, so if you're able to beat the first team, then she simply goes into the awakened skill versus the second team and is essentially able to wipe them out very quickly. The third character on the team can vary, and you can potentially use a support character, but I like to use Gladiator because he has a lot of lockdown from his fifth skill that he opens up with, and because he has a type disadvantage versus blast types, then Ikon kind of protects versus his counter when you use Gladiator, so they kind of help support one another. These last few clips kind of give you a little bit of a preview on Gladiator's performance in PvP, since a lot of people are looking at him specifically for ABX and ABL. I kind of wanted to test him for PvP first, and that's basically what I'm going to be doing coming up, but you get a little bit of a sneak preview here, and you can see that he's definitely pretty decent for a character that doesn't have iframe ignore, and definitely helps improve this specific team. When I get him to tier 4, I'm curious to see how much better his performance will be, but as you can currently see, Ikon is kind of the star in this team for now. That pretty much covers the performance for Quasar and Ikon. They are definitely solid additions for Alliance Conquest, and you could potentially get some value out of Ikon in things like Timeline if you're facing off versus characters like Jean. Just want to reflect damage back to her to beat her specifically. As I mentioned at the start of the video, if Surfer ends up getting the tier 4 next, he is the next one that I will cover, followed by Gladiator after that. And again, if you want to participate in the Crystal Coupon giveaway, make sure to go to my Discord channel and join that. Then leave a comment on this video with your Discord name and whatever else you want to say to be eligible for it. If you found this video entertaining or useful, please make sure to like so I know, and possibly subscribe or share it with someone else that might also find it useful. As always, I appreciate people taking the time to watch my videos, so thank you, but the video is now over.